And let me ask the very familiar question. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right, great.
Yes.
Awesome. So before we get started, let me just introduce myself real quick. My name is Dian Taylor. I work as a director for TMC Business Applications at RSM. I write blog articles every week at D365goddess.com. Feel free to check that out. Do YouTube videos once a week as well. Don't have a life. Really like to help out with the community. You can also follow me on Twitter at D365Goddess or connect with me on LinkedIn, excuse me, obviously as well. So let's just get started. So today I'm going to talk about the configuration and where you can set that up, right? Both from the Sales Navigator side and from the Dynamics 365 side as well. And I'm going to talk about data validation, and then I'm going to show you guys how you can actually set that up. Then data synchronization, we're going to talk about SmartLinks, how you can now actually create a contact directly from LinkedIn and then push that to Dynamics 365. And I'm also going to talk about, I'm going to show you guys how you can actually create that or show that Sales Navigator widget directly on Dynamics 365 from within the form as well. Then we're going to, again, dive into a demo, and I'm going to talk a little bit about a bit of pricing as well. I'm not a pricing expert, so keep that in mind as well. So, oops, did I just click the wrong button here? Hang on here. So most of you probably have heard of the integration between Dynamics 365 for Sales and LinkedIn Sales Navigator, but might not know exactly how everything works. So that's really what I'm going to talk about through this session. But keep in mind that I'm not going to cover, obviously, all the features in Sales Navigator. I'm just going to cover what's relevant through this particular integration with Dynamics 365 and LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Now, with this integration, we're going to be able to move data between applications, which means that we will have to enable and configure this integration in both LinkedIn Sales Navigator and also in the Dynamics 365 application. So I'm going to talk about what data can be synchronized a little later during this presentation. But think about if we're going to have data flowing into Dynamics 365, this is going to give us a lot more options to perform, for example, actions on the data as well. We can use Power Automate to automate processes, such as maybe setting up an alert when a LinkedIn activity is created in Dynamics 365. And again, since that data now also lives in Dynamics 365, because it's being pushed over from LinkedIn Sales Navigator, we can now also start reporting on those LinkedIn activities as well. So let's talk about, right, setting up that integration. There are some prerequisites that you kind of have to think about as well. So for example, CRM Sync is actually not available for Dynamics on-premise. Now the widget will work on-premise, although some features might not be available in there as well. And you also have to keep in mind that Sandbox installation is also not supported. So what you do need is the versions that you can see over here that you can use for that setup for the CRM Sync, is you can have Microsoft Dynamics 2016 online or Dynamics 365, again, online only, running on version 8.2 or higher. Then you're going to need a user account, right? That user account needs to have a system administrator role, and they're really recommending using an integration account for that as well. And then you need, obviously, the Microsoft Relationship Sales subscription. If you don't have the Microsoft Relationship Sales subscription, you can also basically purchase Microsoft Dynamics 365 Sales and then basically buy your LinkedIn Sales Navigator Team or Enterprise subscription separately as well. We'll talk about that a little bit later as well. Then you need to have JavaScript enabled, and obviously you need to make sure that your pop-up blocker is disabled for that Dynamics 365 domain, right? So you can access that. So by default, the LinkedIn solutions in Dynamics 365 are not automatically installed. So an administrator needs to install that solution package before, right, you can start working with them. So you can start this as installation by just navigating to this area that you see on the slide, which is the business management. and then clicking there on that LinkedIn Sales Navigator button to start that installation. So that's the easy way of doing it. Obviously, you can also just go to, the app settings online and install it from there as well. This is, like I said, really an easy way to kind of do that. So once you do that, right, on this page, when you're clicking on that LinkedIn Sales Navigator, this is going to launch that installation window, and this is what that looks like. So you're just going to go ahead and click continue, and then it will go ahead and install those solutions. And once those solutions are being installed, you can then again go back to that previous screen, right? Click on LinkedIn Sales Navigator. And this is going to take you to a screen where now you're going to be able to enable that integration. You can turn on photo refresh. You can turn on the LinkedIn updates, which we talk about a little bit later as well, what that exactly means. And then lastly, you can also turn on the LinkedIn Sales Navigator controls on the forms. Those are already pre-existing on the forms, but they're hidden by default. So now you can just go ahead and unhide those areas on those forms, which again, I'll show you a little bit later as well, what that looks like. And then you also have the ability to add those widgets on the form yourself. So I'll show you how to do that as well. That's just a control in that form that you can just enable from there. So now that we've just set up or kind of showed you how you can enable that in Dynamics 365, now we also need to do that setup from the Sales Navigator perspective as well, right? So when you're doing this setup, you can actually enable right back from Sales Navigator to Dynamics 365. And what that means is it's really allowing us to save information that's created in Sales Navigator, and then we can write it back to Dynamics 365, right? You can see here that there's also a connector to Salesforce, but obviously, right, we're really focused on Dynamics 365, so that's really what we're going to talk about. And what's exactly going to be synchronized, I'm going to talk about those details just a little bit later in the presentation as well. Now, the thing that you kind of have to remember when, for example, when you're connecting your Sales Navigator with your Dynamics 365 CRM instance is it will take about 24 hours or so for that to synchronize that over. And once you have connected them, you're going to have to set some additional settings on the Sales Navigator side as well, which are basically on the same page where you turn on that or where you actually set up the connection to start with. Now, after that sync has been configured, you can now also configure data validation. And when data validation is turned on in Dynamics 365, what happens is the system actually is creating a new field. It's actually, the system name is a MSDYN_org change status. And that's called a not at company flag field. It's added to the contact entity in Dynamics 365. And it is a dropdown, and the values that are in that dropdown are no feedback, not at company, and ignore. So the way that this works is that when the current company of a LinkedIn contact, that it doesn't match the account that the contact is related to in your Dynamics 365 instance, the field is going to be set to not at company. So what happens is that now you can use that flag to basically filter out any contacts that have changed organization. Now, keep in mind that this validation only happens for contacts related to accounts, and for contacts related to opportunities that are owned by a Sales Navigator user. Because you could have, maybe you have 50, Dynamics 365 users that work with contacts and opportunities and whatever other records in Dynamics 365, but maybe of those 50 folks, you only have 10 people that have that Sales Navigator license. So keep in mind, only those, right, what I just mentioned, those contacts related to accounts and opportunities and just regular contacts that are owned by those Sales Navigator users will have that data validation happen, right? Again, that happens every 24 hours. So now, besides that option set field, there's actually also going to be 4 new views that are going to be added to Dynamics 365, 2 new views for contacts, One of them is called all contacts not at company, and then my contacts not at company. And obviously that filters out on that not at company flag, right, on the contact entity. And then there's going to be two new opportunity views, all opportunities at risk dash contact left, and then my opportunities at risk contact left. So again, right, any opportunities that are related to a contact that have that not at company field flag set to not at company. So that's kind of how we can use that. And then lastly, you'll also be able to actually see that visual when you're going to the account org chart. You'll see a red dot next to the person who is no longer at that company because that field is set to that person not being there anymore. And then we also have photo refresh. And what that means is that, again, any of those contacts that are owned, right, what we said earlier, by any of those Sales Navigator users that are matched profiles, that are matched with a profile in LinkedIn, it's actually going to update the most recent profile picture from LinkedIn into Dynamics 365. And this is also a daily sync that runs over. So data validation is actually helping with the matching of Dynamics 365 records with LinkedIn records, right? So that kind of means that when I'm in Dynamics 365, I might have a lot of leads and contacts in there that I want to match up with a profile in Dynamics 365. So when you connect the two, Dynamics 365 and LinkedIn Sales Navigator, it's basically going to take a look at your connections, and it's going to take a look at the leads and contacts that I have in the system, and it's going to compare them by these fields: first name, last name, title, company, and then we have country, and then phone and email as well. And that's how it's going to match up that particular data. Now, it's probably, for some, it might not find a match. In that case, you can actually manually match that. And that's kind of what you see on the slide. If I click that match button, I actually manually matched that Sales Navigator profile with a contact record or a lead record in my Dynamics 365 instance. And then for the matching for LinkedIn organizations, right, or account records in Dynamics 365, these are the fields, again, that are going to be compared, right? So you get the full address, obviously the company name, the full address, then the website field, the phone, industry, and then the number of employees. Now, obviously, the more data that you're going to have populated in those fields in Dynamics 365, the more accurate the match is going to be, right? And I just mentioned earlier, just like you saw with the contact record, you can now see that this is now actually a LinkedIn account profile that has been matched inside of Dynamics 365. Now, we also have something that I just mentioned earlier, where now you can actually create a contact from within Sales Navigator, and then you can push that contact to Dynamics 365. So this wasn't available previously. I think this came out somewhere around, I believe it was in the update for May, which is very nice. It's exactly that. I'll show that to you guys as well. You just go into Sales Navigator, you hit this button, and then you can just go ahead and sync that contact over to your Dynamics 365 messaging. You also have the ability to, whenever you send emails or regular messages from Sales Navigator to somebody that you're talking to on LinkedIn, and that person is also in your Dynamics 365 database, you can synchronize those email and messages as records, as activities in Dynamics 365. And that doesn't take 24 hours. That's actually pretty quick. So as soon as you send that message, you can set the button to, yes, I want to save this to Dynamics 365. And then it will create that activity in Dynamics 365 as well. You can also turn on Team Link. What that means is if other people on my team have connections, I actually now have ability to view those as well. So I basically get access to my team's connections as well, which really expands my network, obviously. And then we have SmartLinks, which allows users to share files to kind of package them, and then we can track engagement. So when somebody actually accesses that quote that I put on my SmartLink, I can actually see when somebody accessed that. So I'm going to go into details on this a little bit later in the presentation as well. Now, how do I connect LinkedIn Sales Navigator to Dynamics 365? It's very, very simple. So I have this little video that I'm going to play for you because I don't want to do that live, because then I have to disconnect, reconnect, set everything back up, and we don't have that much time. So I'm just going to show you what that looks like very quickly, easy. You can see here, you can click on the Connect to CRM button on your screen, and that will bring up, right, which CRM system do you want to connect to. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit Microsoft Dynamics. I only have to put in here this subdomain, so not the .crm.dynamics.com. I'm just going to go ahead and put in my org. You can see here, I can click on continue. Now it's going to ask me to go ahead and sign in. You just put your login credentials in here. You're going to sign in. It's going to try and close this window, as you can see. And that is it. That's how easy it is to hook up your LinkedIn Sales Navigator to Dynamics 365. Now, there's some other options as well that we're going to go over a little bit later as well. So let's just jump into a demo real quick. Let's first go into Sales Navigator. I'm actually going to go here to Home, Sales Navigator. This is what it looks like when you log into Sales Navigator. And if you are an admin, obviously you will see this admin tab, which again, you will need in order to set up that integration. So you can see here, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I can do, right? But this is where we can manage our CRM sync. So this is that button that we talked about. Since this is now connected to my CRM, this now only shows that button that says disconnect CRM, right? And then it's telling me, hey, do we want to enable CRM sync for all seat holders with CRM? This is something that we're going to talk about a little bit later. A lot of these features need you to actually have this CRM sync for all seat holders set to yes. So that's kind of why I'm going to show you this right now, because we're going to get back to that. And it kind of says it over here as well, right? We're going to be able to do activity write back, such as in-mails, notes, SmartLinks, etc. So all of that, again, you need to be able to set that over here. Now, you can look at some other features here as well. If you go to Account Center over here, this is also like, right, once you actually have your users in there, right, I have my users over here. I can here see how many licenses are available. I can see who's actually enabled for CRM sync, right? So you saw on the previous screen that I set it on, I turned it on for the entire organization, but you still have to go in here and then turn on CRM sync on a per user basis as well, right? So that's what that is. And then again, if you wanted to go ahead and make people, remember what I said earlier, you need to actually be an admin on here as well. If I click here on manage permissions, I can make somebody a sub admin, or I can make them a full admin directly from within here as well. Now let's take a look in Dynamics 365. If I go here into my settings and business management, this is where we can enable the integration from the Dynamics 365 perspective. So obviously it's already been turned on. So if I click on that now, this is where, right, I can turn that on. I can turn on my photo refresh and those updates. So this is, right, like you can see that over here. If you want users to see those notifications when they change organizations, right, it's going to show that in Dynamics 365 as well. So now let's talk a little bit about data synchronization, right? And that's really, right, what data is going to be synchronized from one application to the other. So we just saw that the synchronization can be set up bidirectional. So now I kind of want to talk a little bit about what's actually being pushed over. So I'm going to start with what's going to be synchronized from Dynamics 365 to Sales Navigator. So I received several questions about this, because some people might think that as soon as you make that connection, you set up that integration, the data is going to be pushed to Dynamics 365 as a contact, as a lead. So I heard several people that say, oh yeah, everything is going to be synchronized. You probably don't want that. If you have people that have like over, 4,000 or whatever contacts in LinkedIn Sales Navigator, you probably don't want that to be pushed into your Dynamics 365 instance, right? So let's talk about that. So the first thing I want to talk about is really Dynamics 365 to LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So what happens is accounts and leads are saved for all open opportunities where the stage is greater than the stage that's been chosen in the CRM sync preferences. So let me go ahead and jump back in here real quick, because you're going to say, what the heck are you talking about? Well, this is where it says, at which stage does your sales team consider an opportunity to enter your pipeline? So whatever stage you have picked in here, that's really what the stage that I was talking about, right? So this is a stage that is obviously set by an administrator for all users. And it kind of enables Sales Navigator to automatically deliver those updates to users on those most important people and companies. Now, when you are in Sales Navigator, and I'll show you this in a second as well, you're going to see a CRM button within Sales Navigator. If you're on one of those records that is already, that's either inside of CRM because you manually matched it or the system matched it, right? So clicking on that button will actually open that record in Dynamics 365. So you're going to see that button, not just for what we just said, that we manually save that, but it's also going to be obviously, right, because of some of that information that's been synced over from Dynamics 365. And that's kind of what you see on the slide, obviously, as well. Now, again, the synchronization runs as whatever integration account that you have for the connected CRM. And it relies on secure bulk APIs provided by Dynamics 365 to do that, again, that daily sync. Now, if we look from the other side, what is going to what are we going to be able to sync over from LinkedIn Sales Navigator to Dynamics 365? We can configure that, right? So we can have users allow them to send emails and messages from Sales Navigator to LinkedIn contacts, and then through the integration, we can have that come back to Dynamics 365. The way that they can do that, and you'll see that in a second when I show that in a demo as well, is that there's actually a copy to CRM checkbox on the message window. And when you have that set to yes, obviously then the system is going to create that activity in Dynamics 365. Now, today, this is one of the questions that I get a lot. Okay, well, what happens if the LinkedIn contact responds to that email message, right? Or that in-mail message? Does that go back to Dynamics 365? Not yet, but that is definitely something that is on the roadmap. So maybe in the next quarter, or maybe even after that, that's going to be something that might be added to the application. Now, you can also, as a Sales Navigator user, you can also create a note in Sales Navigator, which is, again, having a similar copy to CRM slider there. The only thing you need to keep in mind is that it does not go the other way around. So if you create a note in Dynamics 365, that is not going to show up and synchronize back to Sales Navigator. It's just coming from Sales Navigator into Dynamics 365. And then there's also Sales Navigator mobile application. And it's very similar to the Dynamics 365 application, so that when you are on a contact record, right, and you click that phone number, it will dial out, it will actually call that lead or that contact. And then when you hang up, you're going to have that phone call record automatically pops up. So it works the same way in Sales Navigator. And then that also has that slider that says whether or not you want to save that phone call record to Dynamics 365. So there's several things and several ways that we can save data from Dynamics 365 to Sales Navigator. Now we'll also have SmartLinks, and I'll talk about that in a second. SmartLinks are actually replacing Point Drive. What happened is, I believe this was in May of 2020, is where SmartLinks replaced Point Drive in Sales Navigator. And this feature really allowed the users to share like files and documents with customers and prospects. Think about it as OneDrive, right? Where you just store some data on your OneDrive. The only difference with this is that when somebody actually accesses your SmartLink, then you can track that. You can have the system write that back in Dynamics 365. Usually you also get an email notification, but there's going to be, if you have this enabled, obviously, there's going to be a SmartLink presentation viewed activity inside of Dynamics 365 as well. And then obviously, it's kind of nice. This is what that looks like if you're actually sending an email or a message from within LinkedIn Sales Navigator. You see the link on here. What that means is that I can, when I'm creating a message from within Sales Navigator, I can also create my smart link where I'm going to store that document and then send that link directly to that prospect or that lead from within here. And again, right, that message can be sent back to Dynamics 365 as well. Now, this is kind of nice that we talked about this earlier, right? That now you can actually go inside of LinkedIn Sales Navigator and you can create a contact record from LinkedIn Sales Navigator by just clicking a couple of buttons. You can attach them to existing accounts, and then what it does is it will actually run a process to make sure it's not a duplicate that's already in the system, and then you can just go ahead and create that record in Dynamics 365. Now, again, this is one of those features that you need to make sure that CRM Sync is enabled. And that's really that all seat holders, right? Enable Sync for all seat holders that I showed you earlier, that's actually set to yes. Now, besides enabling contact creation, you can also say like, hey, when people are creating that contact in Dynamics 365, I want that email address field to be mandatory. Right, so they have to actually go ahead and set that up because I don't want leads in there without an email address. If you wanted to, or contacts in there, if you wanted to do that, you can set that up. And then you also have the ability to select the lead source value that should be associated to contacts created from Sales Navigator. So out of the box, there is the system name of that field is lead source code in Dynamics 365. So you can add values to that, right, in Dynamics 365. And then when you get into LinkedIn Sales Navigator onto that configuration page, you'll see those values in there. So let me, again, pull that up real quick. If I scroll back here, this is what I'm talking about, right? Hey, do we want to allow contact creation from Sales Navigator? We can turn this on or off. Do we want to require an email address when people are creating contacts? Again, we can turn that on or off here. And then which value do we want to select? These are values in that lead source code field of the contact entity in Dynamics 365. So you can, I just added the Sales Navigator value in there so that anytime that I'm creating these contacts in Sales Nav or in Dynamics 365 from Sales Navigator, that's the field that's the lead source that is going to register for that particular contact, for all those contacts. Now, this is kind of how that works, right? You are in Sales Navigator on a particular person. I can click here on the ellipse that will bring up the Add Contact to CRM. And when I then click that button, there is a duplicate check that will run in Dynamics 365 on the contact records. And then if a duplicate is found, you can, it's not going to recreate it. You can just match it up to that record in Sales Navigator. And if there's not a duplicate record, then you can just go ahead and move forward and then create that contact record in Dynamics 365. So you're going to go ahead and create or you select an account, and that's going to look at the accounts that are already in your Dynamics 365 system. Once you've done that, you can also attach it to an opportunity. So this is just going to filter on opportunities related to this account. And then you can also go ahead and add a stakeholder role as well if you wanted to. Now you can see here, these fields are already, some of them are already pre-populated. That's the first name, last name, job title, and country field. And then you can add your email address. You can see that in here. And you can also add a phone number field in there as well. Now, besides those write-back capabilities, we also have the ability to view LinkedIn profile data directly from within the context of a Dynamics 365 record, and that's the iframe. And this is really where a lot of this functionality is going to come into place. So what that looks like is right, you can see here, this is that widget that I can put on my form by myself. But you can also see here that I have my LinkedIn Sales Navigator area that houses, right, those particular pieces of the widgets as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull that up real quick. Let me go here to my contact. Here you can see that I've already configured that widget on my form. And the way that you do that is by just pulling in the last name field on, in this particular case, this contact record, right? I'm going to go to controls, and then I can add right here my LinkedIn Sales Navigator member profile. And that's how I can add it to my form by myself. Or I can just say, hey, I'm going to unhide this particular tab that is now going to show me LinkedIn information directly from within Sales Navigator within Dynamics 365. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you a couple of things here, which makes this such a great tool for us to work with. So when I click on icebreakers, I can see all of the connections that I have in common with this particular contact with Angel. So I can see here all of the contacts we have in common. I can go ahead and I can also see that we have both worked at RSM. That's something we have in common. And if I go ahead and click on here, I can see that we also have 3 mutual groups in LinkedIn that we have in common. So those are some of the things that I can talk about. Also, if I click on Get Introduced, again, I can see some of the folks that we have in common and can actually ask them for an introduction. When I click this actually takes me directly into Sales Navigator, and it opens up, as you can see, a message. So I can now start a conversation to ask Kevin if he could please introduce me to Angel. Right. Again, if I click on profile, I can just go ahead and look at his profile again, and I can also view that in Sales Navigator. If I want to go ahead and just message him, I can obviously do that in this area, but I can also do that from within here. So let's say I want to go ahead and just ask him, like, hey, I'm going to say, I'm just checking in. And before I send that, I'm actually going to show you that here, this is where this is going to show up. You can see here, I was already working with this a little bit yesterday to make sure it was working. So let's go back to Sales Navigator and let's actually send him that message. And then I'll show you what that looks like, right, once I actually send it over. So I'm going to say, just checking in, right? And then you can also see that I have that copy to CRM. This is, right, copy message to CRM. So I'm going to go ahead and send that. And now let's go back to my summary and let's actually refresh that over here. And there you go. Here's my just checking in. So you can see this is pretty quick. This is not, I have to wait 24 hours for that to happen, right? Immediately you can see that that shows up. SmartLinks, we talked about that. We can actually set up SmartLinks in Sales Navigator. Let me actually go here to Sales Navigator outside of I can go here to SmartLinks. I can set up my SmartLinks over here, right? I can just go ahead, click new SmartLink. I can update, add files to this. And then you will see here, I can copy this link. And then what I can do is I can email that to Angel's chat. I can, however you want to do that. Then when he actually accesses it, it's going to, as you can see here, SmartLinks content viewed. So I can see that he actually viewed it. If you have this set up, you can, you can also see, that's not what I want to do. Here that I'm going to be able to see in my insights that a SmartLink was actually opened by Angel as well. So you get kind of that additional functionality with it as well. And then obviously, like we saw earlier, we had messages that we created from within here that were automatically synchronized over, that record was created. Now, if I go back to Sales Navigator, let me just go ahead and, Sales Navigator. If I go here to Angel, let me just open that up. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a note. I can just go ahead and add that note. And here again is that copy to CRM button, which then results obviously in now creating that note and seeing that note directly here in the application. A couple of other things that I wanted to go through before for the 3 minutes that we have left. Now, keep in mind that your organization needs to have a Microsoft Enterprise agreement in order to purchase the relationship sales licenses, and that there is a 10-seat minimum. Now, don't panic. A lot of people are like, oh, that means I can't do it. No. If you don't have that Microsoft Enterprise agreement, you can still purchase LinkedIn Sales Navigator separately, right? And then add that to your Dynamics 365 for sales. So this is kind of what that pricing looks like. You can see here that you have the Microsoft Relationship Sales solution, excuse me, and the Microsoft Relationship Sales Plus solution. And this kind of shows what that is, right? LinkedIn Sales Navigator Enterprise, and then Dynamics 365 for Sales Enterprise, or your team license with Dynamics 365 for Enterprise. Now, there is different obviously, functionality in Enterprise and Team. And I would definitely take a look at this particular link. This is kind of right what the cost normally is. Professional is $64.99 per month, and then Team and the Enterprise, it doesn't show on here, but what that is $1,600 annually per user, and there is a 10-seat minimum. So it's not like you can just buy one Enterprise seat. So keep that in mind as well. And when we're talking about those differences, right, between professional and team, this is kind of where you can kind of see, right, what do you get with professional? What do you get with team? And if you want to take a look at that online, definitely write this down, business.linkedin.com, sales-solutions/compare plans. So that's where you want to go to if you want to compare, right, those plans. That's basically what I have here on the slide. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions. Any questions?
Hi, Diane. This is Michelle. Question about Point Drive. Was it replaced because
Yes.
now functionality is inside, like are using SharePoint? Where are these documents saved?
So basically, it's saved on LinkedIn. It used to be called Point Drive, and now it's called SmartLinks. So you're actually saving it. It has nothing to do with SharePoint or anything like that. You are saving it on your Sales Navigator in that area. So it has nothing to do with like I said, SharePoint or anything like that. You just go here to Sales Navigator, and as you can see, this is part of my Sales Navigator Smart Link, right? That you can give people access to that. And then, like I said, the other reason for that is also, excuse me, that we can now actually see when somebody is actually accessing that particular link. It's very similar to Point Drive. Point Drive was exactly the same, but instead of it being called Smart Links, it was called Point Drive, and you also had that right back. As you can see now, it says Smart Links content viewed, and it used to say Point Drive viewed, but it is actually living on Sales Navigator.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks, Diane. On this topic, can you show us more about how to set up one of these smart links? Like, how do you upload the document and then?
Yeah, absolutely. You just click on New Smart Link, and then I can just go ahead and add my file. And it's basically exactly the same like any other file type kind of, right? I do RSM quote, boom, that's it. And then I hit create smart link, and that's it. So I can do multiple files, obviously, right? If you want to send like a whole bunch of flyers to your prospects, you can just go ahead and do that. And then when somebody accesses that, let me see here. I actually got a notification. You can see I can just go ahead, preview that, and then I can hit, I need to put in a title, right? Quotes, create smart link, and as you can see, that's it. And now I can just go ahead and copy that link. When somebody then accesses that, it's actually going to email me and show me, right, okay, he's viewing this quote right now, and now I can actually follow up with him, right? So this is Sales Navigator, right? It's sending me that notification. And then again, if you have it configured in Sales Navigator to say, I want that to be written back to Dynamics 365, you can see, excuse me, you can see here that it shows in here my Smart Links content has been viewed. So now, since the data now lives in Dynamics, now I can do flows, I can do workflows, I can do reports on this, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions?
With regard to Salesforce, what's the difference?
I only work with Dynamics 365, so I can't really give you that answer. But if you go online and you kind of search for that, you're going to be able to find what some of the differences are. I know that, like I said, in May, we were now able to actually add a profile from LinkedIn Sales Navigator and push that to Dynamics 365. And it's kind of funny too, because LinkedIn is now owned by Microsoft, right? But that feature was actually first released in Salesforce. So they go up pretty, it's pretty, the same, but, sometimes some of the features are first in Dynamics 365 and sometimes they're first in Sales Navigator. But I think most of them are pretty similar to one another. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.